Shannon Martin. Tonight, it's official. Masks are no longer required in most public settings in Ontario.
It happened a long time ago. I think that it should have been people's personal choice.
I honestly feel a little safer when I'm wearing a mask.
No more masks on public transit and even in hospitals. Plus, random testing at airports for fully vaccinated returning passengers is suspended for now. And
there's a bicycle lane literally just south of the road. So why do they need the road?
That was such a benefit of COVID when we were going through so much struggling, and it made everyone active and out.
A very public battle over active TO. The president of the Blue Jays calls it a nightmare for fans. We ask you to weigh in.
See art as storytelling, see fashion as storytelling.
Indigenous fashion takes center stage with the much anticipated return of the Indigenous Fashion Arts Festival. We'll talk with a rising star in the world of fashion at her Toronto studio.
This is CBC Saturday News.
Thanks for joining us. It's official. Masks are no longer required in most public settings in our province, including transit. Farah Morelli spent the day talking with people and some experts about the change and if they feel ready.
It's been a familiar sight through the pandemic in Toronto. Masked passengers on streetcars and subways. Today, for the first time in nearly 2 years, they're no longer required.
It should have happened a long time ago.
I honestly feel a little safer when I'm wearing a mask.
Yeah, I just feel like it's no trouble. I'm so used to it now.
The message from Ontario's top doctor, the COVID situation here is improving. And coupled with high vaccination rates, it's time for mandates to go. And some agree.
I think we have to recognize that when we look at Ontario right now and when we look at much of the country, cases are plummeting, right? We have hospitals being decompressed, ICUs decompressed.
The province's lifting of mask mandates today also extends to hospitals. But in the past 2 days, hospitals across Ontario have quickly moved to implement their own mandates. Some on the front line say the numbers are trending down, community transmission is still happening, and there are concerns about vulnerable populations.
I wish that mask mandates would have remained because they're that additional important layer of protection.
The main problem for us is now we're going to have to reevaluate our own risks.
Some who are immunocompromised feel they're not being considered. Adam Colquhoun lives with cerebral palsy and has limited lung capacity.
It's one of those things where we get it, everything's opening up, but for some of us, that's going to mean we're actually can't use public conventional transit.
Back at Osgood subway station today, more masks still visible than not. Some riders saying they're keeping it on for now.
I still probably will wear one, but I'm I'm indifferent if other people wear one.
In a crowded situation on a subway train, I'd probably continue to wear one for the time being.
I'm used to it, it's kind of ingrained in your memory.
While we are seeing these mask mandates lifted in most parts of Ontario today, there are 2 places the province has decided to keep them: retirement homes and in long-term care homes. For now, the mandates will remain in place in those 2 settings. Farah Morelli, CBC News, Toronto.
Meantime, the federal government is suspending random COVID testing at airports until the end of June. And starting in July, all testing will be done off-site, not at the airport, but unvaccinated travelers will still be tested on arrival. Despite the new measure, at least one travel expert doesn't necessarily expect the long lineups at Pearson to get any better.
You get that random COVID test done at the very end of your airport journey when you land in Canada, if you are selected. So that's after you've gone through customs, after you've picked up your bag. All of those other long wait times are still kind of going to still be happening. This is a little step that will alleviate it a bit more. Airports are really busy because we are seeing that pent-up demand. This is high travel season in general. Plus the fact that we haven't been traveling for the past couple of years. Anytime a mandate or a restriction is lifted, we've seen more travelers getting out there and doing things.
In other news tonight, starting tomorrow, Toronto Public Health will hold the first in a series of community-based vaccination clinics for monkeypox. TPH says several clinics Will be held in the coming weeks to vaccinate people who have had close contact with someone who tested positive and those at a higher risk of being exposed. Tomorrow's clinic will be for employees of the city's bathhouses. Public Health says there are 11 confirmed cases in Toronto. Here is a live look from Ottawa at this hour. Some streets have recently reopened after being closed for several hours by police. Officers were investigating what they described as a suspicious incident. Heavily armed officers were stationed along roads leading to Wellington with vehicles and police tape blocking access. Later on, in a tweet, Ottawa police said the investigation found there was no risk to the public and the area is safe to reopen. A terrible crash this morning killed 2 women after their small car somehow collided with a dump truck pulling a trailer.
Police were called to the intersection of Warden Avenue and Stouffville Road for a collision report of a dump truck with a trailer and a Toyota Corolla. Sadly, the driver and passenger of the Toyota was pronounced deceased at the scene.
It happened about 8:45 in Whitchurch, Stouffville. Police say the truck driver was taken to hospital with minor injuries. Roads in the area were closed for several hours as police investigated. Officers say it's still too early to determine what led to the crash. Anyone with information or dashcam footage is asked to call police. There is a bit of a battle brewing over the active TO program, specifically along Lakeshore Boulevard West. It was brought in during the pandemic to help get people moving, but the president of the Blue Jays says the lane closures are a nightmare for ball fans. Dale Manukduk takes a closer look.
In a letter to City Council on June 6, Jays President Mark Shapiro acknowledged the importance of active TO when it first launched, going on to write, the location of this program in 2022 drastically impacts fans' ability to access the ballpark on summer weekends when baseball is a main attraction in the city. Many, some more harshly than others, were quick to point out alternative options like GO trains and subways, which are steps away from the Rogers Center.
And you know, I really found it so sad that Mr. Shapiro should write a letter simply setting out the views of his business and the fact that he has 30, 40, 50,000 people coming to a game, and the abuse he took from people online for daring to state his opinion.
Mayor Tory and council will have to balance what people love about active TO and its impacts on neighborhoods and businesses.
Well, my bias as a public health person would be towards the active TO.
New Spadina Fort York Councillor Joe Mihevich sees both sides.
People don't just go to a baseball game. They then go for a walk in the downtown area. Then they go to a restaurant. Then they might go to a pub. They might go to see some friends. That's part of Toronto as well.
And those around his ward were split.
There's a bicycle lane literally just south of the road. So why do they need the road?
Such a benefit of COVID when we were going through so much struggling, and it made everyone active and out.
In the peak summer months of 2020, there were over 35,000 people per weekend day using active TO. While Lakeshore West wasn't included in this weekend's active TO closures and there were no Jays games, the road was shut down momentarily for the Ride to Conquer Cancer and further down for a grilled cheese competition. Now around the city, there were more closures, including for the Portugal Day Parade and the Run for Women.
From our experience with Open Streets is that these types of programs can be even more impactful when they're on major streets like Yonge and Bloor and Danforth. I think the question should be, where can we do this program where it's going to have the most impact and benefit for the largest number of Torontonians? City Council will receive a report from Transportation Services on active TO this coming Wednesday. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
So whether you're driving or taking transit, it is a busy weekend. If you're just trying to get around Toronto, as you heard Dale say, there are a number of road closures plus transit disruptions. This weekend, there's no subway service on TTC Line 1 between Lawrence and St. Clair stations. That's for construction of the Eglinton Crosstown LRT. Service on Line 2 between St. George and Broadview stations will begin by noon tomorrow. There's a beam replacement happening there. Plus, Bay and Sherbourne stations will be closed on Sunday, and there will be no GO train service on the Stouffville line until tomorrow. Replacement buses are running instead. Meanwhile, another record-breaking weekend for gas. You getting tired of hearing that yet? Prices in the GTA has a lot of drivers feeling the pinch. Today, it's up to $2.159 cents a liter. That is up 3 cents from yesterday. You can expect to see more police officers walking the beat across Toronto. The Neighbourhood Community Officer Program is expanding. Mayor John Tory says the city is redeploying 52 officers to 13 priority neighbourhoods.
This will bring the number of neighborhood officers, neighborhood community officers, to 208, serving 51 neighborhoods across the city of Toronto. So that is a program that is working, and the goals will be, of course, to prevent crime, to reduce crime, to deal with those who commit criminal activities, but even and much more importantly, to build relationships, to gain insight into community needs, to gain insight into why criminal activity occurs, and I suppose most important of all, to build trust.
Earlier this week, Toronto Police confirmed to CBC that community officers in all but 3 divisions are being moved to the Neighbourhood Officer Program. Now, this has raised some concerns from residents who worry what the loss means for crime prevention and safety. Like community response officers, neighbourhood officers are stationed in communities, but they are only in specific neighbourhoods and spend 4 years there. Toronto Police say they make these operational decisions based on resources and are committed to ensuring that public safety is maintained. Some Torontonians are getting set to attend a gala later tonight, completely decked out in red, all for the 5th annual Red Dress Ball in support of those living with HIV and AIDS.
Out of the 4 directors, 3 of our directors are queer identifying, and so it was really important for us to have an event. You know, it's very drag based. We have drag performers that come up on stage, and it's an opportunity for anybody and everybody to come dressed in as little or as much drag or fanciness and dress in red and just have a really good time and celebrate the queer community.
The gala is being organized by the Red Dress Ball Foundation, a Toronto-based nonprofit. Tonight's event brings together special guests and supporters, all in an effort to raise funds and break the stigma around HIV and AIDS. Organizers say they've raised more than $150,000 through the last 4 Red Dress Balls. So here's what people need to know. Do you need an umbrella for the fancy dresses?
Well, here's the clue. Mother Nature is also seeing red as we speak.
Oh no, that's not good.
It's going to be kind of a dodge and keep your eyes to the sky kind of evening and all day tomorrow as well. We're seasonal values right now, but we're still seeing these pop-up scattered storms really everywhere from Hamilton, Niagara up to Barrie along that 400 as well. Lots of lightning, lots of hail. Here is the culprit, lake breeze convergence. Basically what's going on as we speak is cooler air is moving up off the lake and up and lifting over that warmer inland air, creating these really slow moving storms that can drop a ton of rain and have a lot of hail because of the height they reach in the cooler atmosphere. So what we saw over the last little while, lots of lightning and hail into Hamilton, between Grimsby and Hamilton, and up in Peterborough as well. A lot of lightning and hail there can drop a ton of rain like we saw in Oakville earlier as well. You can really see that line where these storms form right between London and Toronto. There will be a bit of a break over the next couple hours till about the overnight period, when that next line of storms and heavy rain will come in. It'll be that dreary rain story throughout the day. Sunday will give you the timing when we come up, Shannon.
Okay, a day for napping. Not too bad.
A day for napping and a little bit of cloudiness here and there.
Okay, thanks, Sophia. We'll see you soon.
See you soon.
To the U.S., where a chorus of voices joined together saying enough's enough and it's time to protect people, not guns. Those were the messages from protesters today demanding meaningful change to gun legislation. Chris Reyes has more from New York.
Ho, ho! The NRA has got to go!
In New York City, they marched across the Brooklyn Bridge, joining thousands across the country, including in Atlanta, San Antonio, and in Parkland, where a school shooting happened in 2018 at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. 17 people were killed. The student survivors of that shooting are leading today's march under the organization they formed after that tragic day, March for Our Lives. One of the leaders of the movement was in Washington, D.C., once again calling for change.
Nowhere in the Constitution is unrestricted access to weapons of war a guaranteed right.
I'm in the thick of an energized crowd crossing the Brooklyn Bridge into Manhattan. They are desperate for change. They are angry about the shootings that are happening in this country that's making them feel unsafe anywhere, especially in schools. And they want change now, meaningful change to gun laws in this country.
The most precious thing we have in our country is our children. And not only are they being killed, but those who survive are being psychologically damaged.
Also in the crowd, former New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio.
Will this march matter?
The first thing to say, you never give up on a cause like this. We will save lives because people are marching.
The march is part of a nationwide campaign to overhaul gun laws in the U.S. Many in the crowd want assault rifles banned, universal background checks, and red flag laws that would give authorities power to confiscate guns in some cases.
The message is definitely the kids are watching. There are 12-year-olds right now who are growing up with anxiety that they can't even go to a place where they're mandated to be and be safe.
A set of bills that would overhaul gun laws in the country passed in the U.S. House of Representatives earlier this week. The gun reform package faces an uphill battle in the Senate despite a Democratic majority. Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
Closer to home, Americans living in the GTA gathered together in a show of support. Greg Ross takes us there.
This is not normal.
This is not normal.
It wasn't a large crowd, just a few dozen, but they all had one thing in common.
How many of you are Americans? Everybody.
Today, they gathered just steps from the U.S. consulate in Toronto to show their frustration after another mass shooting back home. This time, 19 students and 2 teachers gunned down at an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas.
Because as children, it's just so unimaginable. And when I do think about it, my knees get weak.
My heart still hurts. I think about my own babies who are getting ready to go to school.
While their main reason is to show support for the victims and demand change, they also gathered here to support each other.
And I also think it's a time for healing. I think it's a time for anger. I think it's a time for other people who have been gutted by gun violence to come together and to share their stories.
Until we let those who we vote into office know that we will not stand for this, it's never going to stop.
Julia Alford is from Texas. She moved to Canada 6 years ago. She says mass shootings are just one of the reasons she's decided to go back home and push for change.
I have had this uprising in my spirit to want to be an agent of change, not just voting abroad or posting a hashtag on my social media.
The rest say they will use their vote to try and elect politicians who support stricter gun regulations.
Nobody's trying to just take away all the guns, but I don't think we need to all have AK-47s.
This woman says Canadians need to start taking action as well before it's too late.
Canada too. A lot of the rhetoric that's in the U.S. has seeped into Canada. And so you're not that far from it. You know, it could happen. And I think that when Canadians throw their hands up and say it'll never happen here, I think that's hubris.
Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Welcome back. The Enbridge Ride to Conquer Cancer is making a big comeback after 3 years. More than 3,000 riders hitting the road to raise money for research at Princess Margaret Cancer Centre.
Most important thing to understand is that cancer is the next tsunami, with 2 in 5 Canadians diagnosed in their lifetime. It's actually the next epidemic, and it's far deadlier than COVID. But the great news is we have a top 5 cancer research center right here in Toronto, and it impacts standards of care around Canada and around the world.
Riders can choose from 3 routes, including a 200-plus kilometer ride that starts at Exhibition Place and ends at Niagara Falls. This is the 15th annual edition of the fundraiser. The event ends tomorrow at the finish line in Niagara Falls at 6 p.m. You're looking at the Indigenous Fashion Arts Festival happening all weekend long. This is footage from Leslie Hampton's runway show last night. It was the debut of her latest collection called Third Culture Matriarch, a line inspired by and dedicated to her mom, Louise.
My connection is through my mother,
and we are kind of on that reconnecting journey to our Indigenous culture. So it was really exciting to be able to formulate those ideas with her on how my work in fashion does reconnect us to the Indigenous community through incredible avenues like Indigenous Fashion Arts Festival.
The festival runs through until tomorrow evening. In addition to runway shows, there's high tanning and a marketplace with more than 60 vendors selling clothing, jewelry, and more. Stay with us. We'll be right back. The 7th annual Kelsa Cup is back in Brampton after almost 3 years. It is a charity ball hockey tournament that raises money for nonprofit organizations.
It means a lot to see my team and everyone else, especially coming out to watch. It brings the community together, parents, families, friends. And yeah, it's a good thing that we don't get to do this often, and I know it brings a lot of equity and inclusion to the sport of hockey in general.
This year's proceeds will go to Kelsa Aid Canada, a nonprofit organization that provides humanitarian aid during times of crisis. 18 teams and 400 players are competing in the tournament that started on Wednesday, and it'll go through tomorrow in Brampton. Probably a good thing that that's, inside.
It's tough though. It's a weekend when a lot of people have camping trips and cottage plans, and there's festivals returning for the first time, and it's not a complete washout of a Sunday for you and a Saturday night, but it's an eyes to the sky, as we mentioned. Really unpredictable rain into the overnight and storm risk and rain kind of all day Sunday, especially if you want to head out golfing or maybe go see the RBC Canadian Open. It may be kind of a dodge and look before you go kind of day. We're in the dry slot for the next couple hours, as we mentioned. Nocturnal storms and heavy rain, and then also pre-dawn. So hopefully a lot of it gets rained out while you're still sleeping. The chance for some spotty storms and rain throughout your Sunday will be the story going forward. Widespread non-severe storm risk. Not everybody is going to see a storm. A little bit more storm energy though in eastern Ontario and around the nation's capital region for some heavier downpours, as there's a couple rounds of this atmospheric energy that pushes into the Great Lakes Basin. All throughout, widespread, we're probably looking, when it's all said and done, at about 15 to 20 millimeters of rain. Locally heavier though if you do have some storms come through. And then we dry out nicely for the start of the work week. Murphy's Law for the home game that the Jays will be playing Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Summer-like heat returns late week, and we could have the chance for some more heavy rain if you're looking to water the grass Monday night into Tuesday. But it's a seasonal week, so there's some positive glass half full news there.
We'll take it. Thanks so much, Sophia.
We'll see you soon. Have a great weekend.
That is our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. We're going to see you again tomorrow night at 11, but we're going to show you some pictures from Indigenous Fashion Arts Festival. It's running at Harbourfront Centre in Toronto. I was there today. Definitely worth checking out. We'll see you again tomorrow.